طيب إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وبعد. So this is the first session, inshallah, the first halaqah in our new series, لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة لأولي الألباب, which is a verse from the Quran, and it means indeed in their stories there are lessons to be learnt. There are lessons for us to learn. So today, inshallah, we will be talking about the life of a great Imam in the history of the Muslim Ummah, a man with a very big impact, very powerful impact on the Ummah, and there is so much to learn about his life, and there is so much to take away from his life in terms of lessons. And this man is originally from, like his grandfather comes originally from Kabul in Afghanistan. From Kabul in Afghanistan. Anyone guessed who he is by now? Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Bukhari is from Bukhara. Okay. So his name, let's start with his name. So I will be sharing a little bit in Arabic, and then inshallah we'll be explaining it also in English. So هو الإمام النعمان, that's his name, النعمان ibn ثابت ibn زوطي ibn مرزبان. That's his name, النعمان ibn ثابت ibn زوطي ibn مرزبان. Okay, من موالي بني تميم. So his name is An-Nu'man, his father is Thabit, his grandfather is Zuti, that's his grandfather's name. And some say, and his grandfather's name is Mirzaban. Some say Zuti himself is Mirzaban. He himself is Mirzaban, is just a title for him as well. So his grandfather embraced Islam in Kabul. Then he moved to Al-Kufa. He moved to Al-Kufa and he settled in Al-Kufa in Iraq. Kufa today is a bit to the north of Basra, of Al-Basra, in the south of Iraq. His father Thabit, the father of Imam Abu Hanifa, was a businessman. So كان ثابت والده خزازا. خزاز in Arabic يبيع الخز. الخزاز is someone who sells clothes. Who sells clothes. Al-Khazaz. So his father used to be a merchant. He would sell clothes. So Imam Abu Hanifa inherited the same profession or the same line of business from his father. And he actually had a big inheritance from his father. So his father left behind him 200,000 dirham. That was the inheritance share of Abu Hanifa. 200,000 dirham. Roughly speaking, 3 dirham is equal to around $150. So 1 dirham is about $50. 1 dirham is about $50. So his father left him 200,000 dirham. How much would that be in Canadian? $1 million or more? 200,000 times, oh yeah, okay, $1 million. So he inherited $1 million. So Abu Hanifa was a rich man.
But $1 million in that time,
it was a lot more. It was worth a lot more, yes. Yeah, it was worth a lot more. So Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, was a very rich man. Let's take an insight into the person of Abu Hanifa himself. His physical description. He was tall. كان طويلا. So he was tall. يعلوه سمرة. He was brown in color. Basically his origins, he's Persian. He is Persian. So he was tall, a bit dark in color. جميلا حسن الوجه. He had a handsome face. He had a handsome face. مهيبا. He had this sense of serenity and respect about him. لا يتكلم إلا نادرا. He would rarely open his mouth and speak. He would rarely open his mouth and speak. ولا يخوض إلا فيما يعنيه. And he would not utter a word unless the matter concerns him. So Abu Hanifa was someone who didn't speak often. He didn't speak often. And one of his main descriptions that are well known about Abu Hanifa is that كان طويل الصمت أو كان كثير الصمت طويل الفكرة. He would like stay silent for so long, and he would be contemplating all the time, thinking and contemplating. So that was the description of Abu Hanifa. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, we know the great tabi'i, famous scholar Imam Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, describing Abu Hanifa, كان حسن الوجه حسن الثياب. He says Abu Hanifa had a handsome face and very good clothes, because he used to sell clothes. So Abu Hanifa would wear the best of clothes in town. He would dress up neatly and beautifully. That's Abu Hanifa. So he was rich, and he used that money as well. So for himself, in terms of, especially when he taught knowledge, when he gave his classes, he was the best one dressed in the whole masjid. So Abu Hanifa was very meticulous about his clothes and about, his, as you say in Arabic, hindam, how he presented himself in terms of his clothing. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad. By the way, Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad was a very close friend with Abu Hanifa. So he spent a lot of time with him. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad is known as one of the main worshippers in the history of Islam. A very great worshipper. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad describes Abu Hanifa, a very beautiful description. He says, كان أبو حنيفة رجلا فقيها. Abu Hanifa was a faqih, a knowledgeable person. معروفا بالفقه. He was known for his knowledge of the deen. مشهورا بالورع. He was a person who would not get into doubtful issues. He would always take the safe side when it came to religious matters. He would be always on the safe side. مشهورا بالورع. معروفا بالأفضال على من يطيف به. He was a very generous person. You came in contact with Abu Hanifa, he must give you something. He must give you a gift. He must offer you something. That's Abu Hanifa. He was very generous. صبورا على تعليم العلم بالليل والنهار. He was very patient in teaching the Islamic knowledge. Day and night he would be teaching. Most of his time he would be teaching. وحسن الليل. His night was very good. What does that mean? His night was very good. We'll explain that later, because that was a very special thing about Abu Hanifa. كثير الصمت. Often he's silent. قليل الكلام. He spoke very little. حتى ترد مسألة في حلال أو حرام فكان يحسن أن يدل على الحق أو يدل على الحق هاربا من مال السلطان. He would be silent most of the time, unless it was matters of the deen, halal and haram. He would speak about it if he had knowledge, and he would bring the strongest evidence. He was the most skillful in bringing about the evidence. Support his opinion with evidence. هاربا من مال السلطان. He would avoid any gifts from governors, kings and leaders. He would avoid that, because he wanted to stay away from doubtful matters. He didn't want to be influenced by the gifts of people in charge. Again, another description of Abu Hanifa, كان يلقب بالوتد. كان يلقب بالوتد. Al-Watad, he used to be described as Al-Watad. What's Al-Watad? It's the peg. You know the peg that you dig in the ground? You hammer in the ground that piece of wood or piece of metal to hold that, to tie a rope to it, and keep something tight. Yes, for a tent or something. That's a peg. So Abu Hanifa used to be described as a watad, as a peg. Okay? And I will explain later again. Al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, when he met Imam Malik, he asked him about Abu Hanifa. He said, you met Imam Abu Hanifa, so describe him to me. Imam Al-Shafi'i, by the way, was born the year Abu Hanifa passed away. The year Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, passed away, Imam Al-Shafi'i was born. So he didn't see Imam Abu Hanifa. It was the year 150 after Hijrah. So when he saw Imam Malik, he asked him, he said, describe to me Abu Hanifa. Describe him to me. Imam Malik said, نعم رأيت رجلا لو كلمك في هذه السارية أن يجعلها ذهبا لقام بحجته. He said, Imam Malik was a man. If he wanted to convince you that this pole, this pillar, which was made of wood in the masjid, if he wanted to convince you it was made of gold, he could do that. He was very articulate, very strong logic. He could convince you about something that's completely illogical. He had that skill. He had the gift of the tongue, of speech. There was something very special about Abu Hanifa. We said he was very generous. He had a habit, a very special habit. And I really wish that I would hear of someone in our times who actually does what Abu Hanifa did. Abu Hanifa, every time he spent any money on his family or on himself, he would give out for the sake of Allah similar amount. Like he bought his family groceries and it cost him $200, let's say. He would take another $200 and give it for the sake of Allah. Let's say he bought his son a thawb. It cost $20. He would give out $20. Anything he spent on himself or his family, he would give a similar amount for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would give it out. That actually reminds me of Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. The Zayd al-Abidin, the grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the son of al-Husayn. Like when Imam al-Dhahabi talks about him in Sirah Alam al-Nubala, in the biography, collection of biographies, he says, جَعَلَ مَالَهُ مُنَاصَفَةً بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ. جَعَلَ مَالَهُ مُنَاصَفَةً بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ. What does that mean? He split his money between himself and Allah. What does that mean? A few times in his life, he would estimate his wealth, how much it is. So, and he was very rich, by the way, again. Ali, the grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ali ibn Hussein, Zayn al-Abidin, was very rich. So, a few times during his life, he would assess how much is my wealth. So if it was 100,000, he would take half of it and give it for the sake of Allah, and keep half of it. There were actually a few people in the history of Islam who lived that lifestyle. So they would take a few times in their life, they would assess their wealth, they would take half of it, and they would give it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Abu Hanifa would do something similar. Anything he spent on himself or his family, he would give out similar amount for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so that's some description about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Let's take a little bit of background about him. When Abu Hanifa received the inheritance from after the death of his father, and as we said, 200,000 dirham. 200,000 dirham. He had heard a statement that was narrated to him from Ali ibn Abi Talib. That Ali ibn Abi Talib said, because Ali ibn Abi Talib lived in Al-Kufa, at the end of the last 5 years of his life, he lived in Al-Kufa. He said, enough for a human being to live a decent life is 4,000 dirham. So when Abu Hanifa received that inheritance, he gave it all for the sake of Allah, and he kept 4,000 dirham for himself. And throughout the year, he would check his wealth. Anytime it gets over 4,000 dirham, he would give away the rest, and he would keep 4,000 dirham. for himself. So Allah blessed his wealth and Allah gave him more. Allah gave him more. So that was Abu Hanifa. But still, as we said, Abu Hanifa used to dress up very nicely and he used to wear the best perfumes. So he was very presentable as a human being. So he was born in Al-Kufa. He was born in Al-Kufa. We said his grandfather came from Kabul in Afghanistan. Once he embraced Islam, he came to Iraq, settled in Al-Kufa, and then his son Thabit stayed in Al-Kufa, and Abu Hanifa was born as the son of Thabit, and he called him An-Nu'man. An-Nu'man. So Abu Hanifa was born the year 80 after Hijrah. 80 after Hijrah. And that was during the Al-Khilafah Al-Umayyah, the Umayyad Caliphate. The Umayyad Caliphate. So Abu Hanifa was born during the Khilafah of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. 80 after Hijrah was the Khilafah of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Abu Hanifa lived for 70 years. 70 years. And he died, we said, the year 150 after Hijrah. He died in Baghdad. Abu Hanifa died in Baghdad. And the historians are actually, there's a debate among historians, did he just die or was he killed? Did Abu Hanifa die a normal death or was he killed? Because he died in prison. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, died in the prison. Who put him in the prison? Was Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur wanted, because he's now at this year 150, this was the Abbasid Khilafah, Khilafah al-Abbasiyya. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, when he heard about Imam Abu Hanifa and all his knowledge, and he asked him, where did you take your knowledge from? So Imam Abu Hanifa said, I took the knowledge of Umar ibn al-Khattab from the students of Umar ibn al-Khattab. I took the knowledge of Ali ibn Abi Talib from the students of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I took the knowledge of Abdullah ibn Umar from the students of Abdullah ibn Umar. I took the knowledge of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud from the students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So Abu Ja'far al-Mansur said to him, Ya Aba Hanifa, laqad istawthaqta li nafsik. Oh, Abu Hanifa, you have taken knowledge from all the authentic sources. Like you have left no knowledge, you have taken it all. So you have got a firm kind of grounding in knowledge. So Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the Khalifa at the time, wanted him to become the judge, the general judge, the main judge in the Muslim government at the time. Abu Hanifa didn't want that. He refused. And that's here we see a beautiful aspect of the character of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, by the way, was an extremely intelligent person. Extremely intelligent. Extremely intelligent. To the extent that some people said about him, some of the historians said, the likes of Abu Hanifa in the history of humanity are just a handful in terms of intelligence. Extremely intelligent person. And we said that Imam Malik described him that if he wanted to convince you that this pillar was made of gold, he could actually convince you. He could convince you. When he was teaching his students, he would actually, and that was the style of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa would have a discussion, very interactive style. It wasn't about just relating. No, he would get the students involved. He would have a discussion. He would pick their minds to get them to think and get them try to respond. So Abu Hanifa, one of his main exercise in the class, that he used to have an opinion and offer it to the students. So they would debate with him. He would convince them of his opinion. Then all of them would buy into his opinion. Then he would say to them, actually now I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. I don't agree with that opinion. They would say, how? Now they are convinced they're going to defend that opinion. So he would take their original opinion and he would argue with them and convince them that the original opinion was the correct one. And they would not be able to respond back. So they would actually be convinced that their first opinion was the correct opinion. Then he would do that again, take them again to the other opinion. That was Abu Hanifa. As you said, very eloquent, very persuasive, very intelligent. So when Abu Ja'far al-Mansur said to him, I want you to become the main judge in the Muslim government, in the Muslim caliphate. Abu Hanifa said to him, Ya Imam, inni la asluh. I'm not good for that position. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur is very intelligent. He's saying, you're joking me, you're trying to get away from that? You will have to become the judge. So what he said to Abu Hanifa, I'm trying just to get the exact dialogue. So basically, Abu Hanifa said, La asluh, Ya Imam, inni la asluh. He said, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur was also very aggressive person. So he said to Abu Hanifa, you are lying, you're a liar, كذبت والله إنك لا تصلح. He said, no, you're a liar, you are the best person for this position. So Abu Hanifa is very intelligent, very persuasive. He said, أصلح الله الإمام. May Allah enhance or guide the Imam towards truth. How would you put a liar in the position of the main judge? So now if you look at the caliph, he was actually stuck. He was stuck. So either Abu Hanifa is a liar, but if you say he's not a liar, then Abu Hanifa said, I'm not good for that position, then he's no good. So you're between two options. Either he's a liar, you can't make him a judge, or he is not good for the position, you can't put him in that position. So Abu Hanifa was very intelligent. When Abu Ja'far al-Mansur saw this, he couldn't argue with Abu Hanifa. He said, put him in jail. Put him in jail. You have to become the judge. So they actually lashed him 110 times. Imagine the Imam of Iraq at the time, the most knowledgeable person, lashed him 110 times, put him in the prison. And he stayed in the prison. Now the historians have a debate. Did Abu Hanifa just die in the prison out of maybe bad treatment, poor conditions? Or some of the historians say that Abu Ja'far al-Mansur conspired to put poison in his drink, and he died out of poison. So that's a debate among the historians. So that was the year 150 after Hijrah. That was Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Let's get some of what people say about Abu Hanifa, and I want to reveal that beautiful aspect about him. We said Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad said about Abu Hanifa, كان حسن الليل. His night was beautiful. What does that mean? That's an expression the early generations, the Salaf, used for someone who would pray for so long at night. كان حسن الليل. His night was very good. That meant that he would pray a lot, a beautiful prayer at night. Now this is an aspect of Abu Hanifa many people don't know. Abu Hanifa prayed the whole night, from Isha to Fajr. Most of his life, Abu Hanifa prayed Fajr with the same wudu that he prayed Isha with. Is that clear? The same wudu he had for Isha, he prayed Fajr with the same wudu. What does that mean? He never slept at night. He never slept at night, because if he slept, he would lose his wudu and make wudu. So that means he would be awake from Isha till Fajr, and during that time, he would pray most of the time. This is why they called him Al-Watad, the peg. Why? Because he was just like a very fixed kind of pole in the ground. If he prayed, he didn't move. He didn't move. He was so stable and fixed in his place because of the khushu'. That was Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. Now another aspect, he would pray all night. Not only this, he would read the whole Quran every night in his qiyam. The whole Quran. And that's another aspect that many people don't know about Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa would recite the whole Quran every night. Every night he would finish reciting the Quran. So there were actually, in the history of Islam, there were 4 famous people who used to do this as a regular practice. Only 4 people who would do this as a regular practice. The first one among them was Uthman ibn Affan. Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu. The second one was Al-Imam al-Shafi'i. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. The third one was Abu Hanifa, and the fourth one was another companion, Tamim al-Dari. Tamim al-Dari, the companion, the great companion, Tamim al-Dari. So these four people were known for doing this often, reading the whole Quran in Qiyam al-Layl, in Salah, the whole Quran in one night. Obviously, a lot of people would ask, how could you do this? How could you do this? Subhanallah, that's a barakah in time. That's a barakah in time. First of all, like at night, during the winter season, nights are long. Nights are long. But even though if you try to recite the Quran, it would be a struggle to actually finish the Quran from cover to cover during any of the longest nights. But there is a concept of barakah. A concept of blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you really put your mind to something and you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you try your best, actually there are so many things that happen, we might not have an explanation for them. We might not have an explanation for them. So that would be a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oftentimes when Aisha radiallahu anha described his Qiyam al-Layl, she said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every time he recited, he would elongate his recitation. Was very elongated, was slow pace. She said, كان يطيلها وكان يمدها بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Something like this. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Something like this. So the Prophet ﷺ, usually, especially like the narration where Abdullah bin Mas'ud went to pray with him one night, the Prophet ﷺ prayed at night, so he started with Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Baqarah. He recited it completely. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, I said to myself, he will recite the first 100 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, then he would go down for ruku'. But he finished the first 100 and he kept reciting. So I said, okay, he's going to stop by 200. But after 200, he kept reciting. So he finished whole Surah Al-Baqarah. I said, okay, alhamdulillah. Now he's reaching the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, he will go down for ruku'. The Prophet ﷺ finished Al-Baqarah, he started with Surah Al-Nisa. He started reciting Surah Al-Nisa. Now Surah Al-Baqarah in the Medina Mus'haf now is 48 pages. 48 pages. Then he moved to An-Nisa. Started reciting Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa is, I think, 25 pages, if I'm not mistaken. Huh? Oh, 30 pages. Surah An-Nisa in Mus'haf al-Madinah is 30 pages. So the Prophet ﷺ started reciting Surah An-Nisa, he completed it. So Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, I said, okay, he's going to finish Surah An-Nisa and go for ruku'. But the Prophet ﷺ finished Surah An-Nisa, then he said, started with Surah Al Imran. And he finished it completely. So putting these together in Mus'haf al-Madinah today, these are 105 pages. With the manner of recitation where the Prophet ﷺ would recite, that would take at least 6-7 hours. That's one rak'ah. That's one rak'ah. So how much the Prophet ﷺ would pray? How did he fit all of this in? If the second rak'ah was something closer to that. And the Prophet ﷺ would usually pray from 5 to 9, maximum 11. So the Prophet ﷺ would pray. How could he do this? Allahu Alam. Uthman ibn Affan recited the Quran from Fatiha till An-Nas, the whole Quran that we have today, in the rak'ah of witr. One rak'ah. One rak'ah, witr. He recited the whole thing. So Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, was that kind of person. So the description about this was, كان يقوم الليل. This is some of the descriptions from the scholars who met him. كان يقوم الليل كله. كان يقوم الليل كله. فكان يصلي الغداة بوضوء العشاء. So he used to pray Fajr with the same wudu he used for Isha. وكان يلقب بالوتد. وكان يختم القرآن في ليلة. كان يختم القرآن في ليلة. His student, Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf, one of the main, he's the main student of Imam Abu Hanifa. Abu Yusuf Al-Qadi said, بينما أنا أمشي مع أبي حنيفة إذ سمعت رجلا يقول لآخر هذا أبو حنيفة لا ينام الليل فسمعهم أبو حنيفة وقال والله لا يتحدث عني بما لم أفعل فكان يحيي الليل صلاة وتضرعا ودعاء. So Abu Yusuf al-Qadi says, I was walking with Abu Hanifa and I heard someone say to his friend, that's Abu Hanifa, he doesn't sleep at night. He just prays all night. So Abu Hanifa overheard this and he said, it's unacceptable that people say about me that which I do not do. So people think of me more than what I am. So he decided from that moment to pray all night. To pray all night. One of his wives described him. She said, since I knew him, since I knew Abu Hanifa, he never slept at night. He never slept at night. She said, in summer, he would sleep from dhuhr, after dhuhr, till asr. In summer. In winter, he used to sleep at the beginning of the night. At the just beginning, the first couple of hours in the night, because the night was long. That's the whole sleep that he would take. That's Abu Hanifa. This is how he lived his life. So what she said basically, ما توسد فراشا بليل منذ عرفته. I've just said that in English, but I'm just going to say it in Arabic. وإنما كان نومه بين الظهر والعصر في الصيف وأول الليل بمسجده في العشاء. So in summer he would sleep after dhuhr, between dhuhr and asr, and in winter he would sleep in the same place where he would pray the night. He would sleep there just at the beginning of the night for a couple of hours, and that's it. Al-Qasim ibn Ma'an, one of the scholars of his time, he says about him. He says, قام أبو حنيفة ليلة يردد قوله تعالى بل الساعة موعدهم والساعة أدهى وأمر ويبكي ويتضرع إلى الفجر. He said, one night Abu Hanifa was reciting the verse, بل الساعة موعدهم. Their appointment, their time is الساعة, is the hour when it comes. والساعة أدهى وأمر. And the hour, the day of judgment, is more scary and is more bitter. So he said he kept repeating this all night, crying and weeping and calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just one verse. Just one verse. Sometimes we just want to finish like the whole surah. We can't wait to reach the end of the surah. But that was the general practice of the early generations. They would take one verse from the Quran, and they would be contemplating it, and it would grab them and they could not go past it for a whole night. Like Abu Sulaiman al-Darani, one of the early generations as well. He said, والله إنه لتمر بي ليلة أو ليال أقرأ فيها بالآية لا أستطيع أن أتجاوزها إلا أن الله عز وجل يمن علي بغفلة فأتعداها. So he says, إنه لتمر بي الآية فأقف عندها الليالي لا أتجاوزها إلا أن يمن الله علي فأتعداها. So he says, I would be reciting a verse and I would be stuck with it for so many nights. So many nights reciting one verse because of the profound meanings. I would be taking that. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me some kind of like absent-mindedness, or He allows me to just get out of it and move on. So they used to recite Quran in order to focus on the meanings and take more of the meanings. Al-Fudayl ibn Dukayn. Al-Fudayl ibn Dukayn is one of the scholars of hadith, well-known scholars of hadith. He says, رأيت جماعة من التابعين رأيت جماعة من التابعين وغيرهم فما رأيت أحسن صلاة من أبي حنيفة وقد كان قبل الدخول في الصلاة يبكي ويدعو. He said, I have seen a huge number of the tabi'een and other righteous people. I've never seen a man praise more beautifully than Abu Hanifa. Before he entered the salah, before he would start praying, he would be weeping and calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's time for him to stand in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, one of the great of the tabi'een, he said, ما قدم رجل مكة في وقتنا أكثر صلاة من أبي حنيفة. He said, no one came to Mecca in our times, in our whole times, no one came to Mecca who prayed more than Abu Hanifa. Who prayed more than Abu Hanifa. So we said Al-Dhahabi described him, كان من أذكياء بني آدم. So Abu Hanifa was one of the most intelligent people among all humanity. His intelligence was exceptional. So let's take some aspects and other aspects of the life of Abu Hanifa. There was a famous Imam, the famous Imam in Al-Sham, Al-Awza'i, Abu Amr Al-Awza'i. Imam Al-Awza'i, he was in Beirut. He was in Beirut. Imam Al-Awza'i كان فقيه الشام. He was the scholar of all Sham, which is now Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and some parts of Iraq. This was known as Sham. So he was the main Imam there. He heard some wrong news about Abu Hanifa. So one day, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, he visits al-Imam al-Awza'i. And Abdullah al-Mubarak comes from Khurasan, which is now in Iran and Turkmenistan. He comes to visit Beirut and stay with the Imam al-Awza'i. So Imam al-Awza'i asks him, and he says to him, Ya Khurasani. He's talking to Abdullah ibn Mubarak. You are from Khurasan. Okay, he says, من هذا الرجل أو من هذا المبتدع الذي عندكم في الكوفة الذي ظهر عندكم في الكوفة. He says, who's this mubtadi'? Who's this man of bid'ah that appeared in Kufa? Because Abdullah ibn Mubarak visited Kufa and he was there for a while. So he was speaking about Abu Hanifa, because he received some wrong news about Abu Hanifa. And these things still happen today. So he said, who's this mubtadi'? Who's this man of bid'ah who appeared in Al-Kufa? That people call him Abu Hanifa. So Imam al-Awza'i said, I remained silent. I didn't say anything. Abdullah Mubarak said, I remained silent. I didn't respond. But he said, I thought about it and I studied with Abu Hanifa, and I know Abu Hanifa is not a mubtada'. So he said, I went home and I wrote down some of the fiqh of Abu Hanifa that I still remember. Some of the discussions we had and some of his fiqh. So I wrote these issues down. And I put them together as a book. And I wrote on the cover, An-Nu'man ibn Thabit. That's his name, An-Nu'man ibn Thabit, the name of Abu Hanifa. But he wasn't known by his name, he was known by his kunya. Then he put that in the masjid, where Imam al-Awza'i is. So Imam al-Awza'i saw that book, so he started looking into it. So he started reading. And he read the whole book. And he loved it. So Abdullah Mubarak asks him, and he says, what do you think of this book? He said, this man is an imam. He's an imam, he's a person of knowledge. She said, do you advise me to study from him? He said, ilzamhu. He said, stay with him and learn from him. He's a very good imam. He says, this is Abu Hanifa, by the way. This is Abu Hanifa. So later on, Imam al-Awza'i went for Hajj, went to Mecca for Hajj. And there he meets Abu Hanifa. He meets Abu Hanifa. So there was a meeting. So they had a discussion. They had a discussion, more of a debate. So they debate about certain fiqhi issues and they have a long discussion. After the discussion, someone asks Al-Awza'i. He says, how did you find Abu Hanifa? How did you find, okay, obviously reminding him that you said about him he's a mubtada', right? So he said, Wallahi, I envied him. He said, غبطته or غبطته. I had ghibta, the good type of envy. I wish I had his understanding. So I envied him because he had a lot of knowledge and he had a very profound logic and reason. Very profound logic and reason. Then he said, so when he was asked, كيف رأيته? قال غبطته لوفور علمه وقوة عقله وأستغفر الله مما قلته فيه. So he says, I envied him because of his profound, diverse knowledge and because of the strength of his logic and his reason, and I seek forgiveness from Allah for what I said about him previously. Subhanallah. So Imam Abu Hanifa was actually accused of certain things and having some mistakes, but here rahimahullah was a righteous man. And often, like some of the accusations about him is that he did not take hadith, for example. or did not have so much hadith in his fiqh. But this actually wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. He was also accused of having a very bad memory. A very bad memory. Imam al-Nasa'i, one of the Imams of hadith, he actually made jarh on Abu Hanifa. He said Abu Hanifa didn't have a good memory. He used to forget a lot, make a lot of mistakes. But you have Yahya ibn Ma'in. Yahya ibn Ma'in, him and Imam Ahmad, he's before Imam al-Nasa'i. These were the Imams of hadith at that time. Imam Ahmad and Yahya ibn Ma'in. Yahya ibn Ma'in, he said, Abu Hanifa imamun thiqatun hafiz. He said he's imam, he's thiqah, his memory is excellent. So Abu Hanifa, his fiqh was mainly based on the Quran and then on the hadith, on the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But Abu Hanifa had a special way to hadith. So he would take the hadith that people agree upon that it's from the Prophet, that it's authentic from the Prophet ﷺ. That it's authentic. But when he faced a hadith, or when he came across a hadith, and this hadith ran against or seemingly had a meaning that was against the Quran, or against a stronger hadith, Abu Hanifa would question that, and he would say, he would actually be very careful which hadith to take. Which hadith takes. So he had a very critical, stringent criteria for accepting a hadith. It wasn't an easy way, it was very difficult. So his conditions were actually more strict than the conditions of other scholars. So he would question a hadith more than some of the other scholars. But it wasn't that he would reject a hadith. He would never give up a hadith that he knew that was authentic. He would never give up a hadith that he knew that was authentic. And then if he didn't find anything in the Quran or the hadith, he said, فَإِن لَمْ نَجِدْ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم ننظر في إجماع الصحابة. These are his words. He said, we look into the ijma', the consensus of the companions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. وَلَا نَخْرُجُ عَنْ إِجْمَاعِهِمْ. And we do not, depart from their consensus. فَإِنْ اخْتَلَفَ أَصْحَابُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. So if the companions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم had differences about these issues, had different opinions, نَتَخَيَّرُ مِنْ أَقْوَالِهِمْ. We would choose one of their statements that is more in line with the Quran and the Sunnah. أما فيما بعد الصحابة, he says, as to what after the companions, like a tabi'een, he would say, فهم رجال ونحن رجال. He said, they are men and we are men. Why? Because Abu Hanifa was considered to be from a tabi'een. Abu Hanifa was considered to be from a tabi'een. Why? Because he saw one of the companions, at least one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik, the servant of the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Hanifa saw Anas ibn Malik praying. That made him a tabi'i. That made him a tabi'i. There are some narrations that say that Abu Hanifa met so many of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, but there's a big debate about this. There's a big debate. But what is agreed upon is that he saw Anas ibn Malik. By the way, Anas ibn Malik was one of the companions that we say in Arabic, ummiru, al-mu'ammirin. Anas ibn Malik lived more than 100 years. More than 100 years. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu. So Imam Abu Hanifa saw him. So he was considered to be from a tabi'een, but he studied with the main tabi'een, with the biggest among the tabi'een. So some scholars consider him to be from صغار التابعين, the younger ones among التابعين. The number of the shuyukh, the teachers of Imam Abu Hanifa, is mind-boggling. He studied with 4,000 teachers. 4,000 teachers. He studied a lot. He studied a lot. Imam Abu Hanifa, in all the four Imams, his students were actually the most outstanding. Like no Imam, although like Imam al-Shafi'i had great Imams, like students, like Imam al-Muzani and Rabi'a. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal had some students as well. Imam Malik had some students, but none of them were of the same caliber as the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa left Imams behind him. He left Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, who was an Imam in his own right. He left Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani, an Imam in his own right. And he left Zufar. He left Imam Zufar, one of the great Imams of the Hanafis. So these Imams, each one of them was an Imam in his own right. So Imam Shafi'i was also building leaders. So he actually managed to grow leaders around him. Why? It was because of his teaching style. It was an interactive style. I'll share with you a story and I will close with this, inshallah. We might share something else, inshallah, next week, more about Abu Hanifa, some of his beautiful stories. Imam Abu Hanifa was teaching and Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, his main student, was studying with him. Abu Yusuf al-Qadi felt that he reached a point where he actually became qualified to teach. So he decided, he said, I became an Imam now, so I need to make my own halaqah. So he started his own halaqah in the masjid. So Abu Hanifa comes to teach his halaqah, and he says, there's a halaqah on the other side of the masjid. And he says, like, do we have like a visiting scholar giving a halaqah here? Who's? They said, no, this is Abu Yusuf. He said, Abu Yusuf, like my student. They said, yes. He said, so what's going on? They said, okay, now he realized now he's qualified to teach, so he thinks he's qualified to have his own halaqah, so he started his own halaqah now. Imam Abu Hanifa, he doesn't have personal issues, but he knows Abu Yusuf al-Qadi is not ready yet, still needs more. So he says, okay, he wants to teach him a lesson, wants to wake him up. So he says to one of the students, go to his halaqah, and when it's time for questions, ask him a question. He says, okay, what's the question? He said, someone goes to a tailor. He brings a piece of cloth in order for the tailor to, tailor it into a thawb, into a proper garment. So he gives it, and they agree on a price. And he says to him, come in a few days and collect your thawb. You pay me and I will give you your thawb. So the man came to the tailor a few days later, and he says, where's my thawb? He says, what thawb are you talking about? He says, my thawb, I gave you a piece of cloth in order to design it for me into a thawb. No, he said, no, you didn't come to me. You have nothing here. He said, how come? I gave you. He said, no, you didn't give me. So they went to the judge. He went to the judge, and the judge checked, and he sent an inspector to the tailor's shop, and he found a thawb made with the same piece of cloth that was described by that person. Now, what is the ruling? The judge is going to give that man, that customer, his thawb, but should the customer pay the tailor? Because he tried to take the thawb for himself. Should he pay him for making the thawb, or should he just take his piece of cloth regardless of what shape it is now? Because he's just going to take his piece of cloth, which now is shaped as a thawb, right? But he's going to take it back, that's it. So should he pay the tailor or not? So he went there, when it was time for questions, he asked the question to Abu Yusuf. Abu Yusuf al-Qadi thought, and he said, you think about this? He says, yes, he pays him. Abu Hanifa had instructed the student, he said, if he says to you, yes, he pays him, tell him wrong. That's the wrong answer. But if he tells you that no, he shouldn't pay him, also tell him that's wrong. Wrong answer. So when Abu Yusuf al-Qadi answered, he said, yes, he should pay him. The student said, that's the wrong answer. So he thought again, he said, let me think about it again. He thought about it, he said, oh yeah, he shouldn't pay him. He said, wrong. He said, that's not from you. That's not from you. That's from my teacher. He knows now, he knows the style, right? So he dissolves that kind of gathering. He says, I'm not ready to teach. So he gets the lesson, he goes to Abu Hanifa, and he sits in the halaqah. So Abu Hanifa says to him, you know what the answer is? He says, no. He says, the answer is, it's neither yes nor no. The judge should look into the thawb. If it's designed according to the body dimensions of the customer, then he should pay him. The customer should pay. But if it's designed according to the dimensions, the body dimensions of the tailor himself, he should not pay him. Why? That's a question for you.
Because he meant to steal it. If it was made for him, his size, he meant to steal it. So that's why. If it was made for the customer, then you should pay it because he intended to make it for him. But if
Yes.
he made it for himself, then you shouldn't pay because he stole it.
Exactly. You know, that's a very delicate point, by the way. If he made it, if the tailor made the thobe according to his own personal body, his own size, that means he tailored the thobe with the intention to take it. And that's haram. So that's what they call bay'un fasid or batil. So it's invalid. So he's not going to get anything for that. But if he tailored the thobe for the customer with the intention to make it for the customer, and then when he saw the thobe he said, well, that's nice, let me take it for myself. Okay? Still, we should not deny him the right that he made the thobe with the intention to make it for the customer, so he deserves the money there. Huh? The intention. So the ruling has to do with the intention. So that was one story of how Abu Hanifa dealt, okay, with these issues. So that's a glimpse into the life of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala. There's so much, by the way, to say about Abu Hanifa. There's so many beautiful stories. His debates, when he started, by the way, his knowledge, his studying, he started by studying ilm al-kalam, basically argumentation. Basic ilm al-kalam, which was argumentation at the time, before it picked up later on. So why did he learn this? Because he wanted to debate the Khawarij. He wanted to debate the Khawarij. And he has beautiful debates with the Khawarij, by the way. But one day a woman comes to him and she asks him about al-talaq. About talaq al-sunni, talaq al-bid'i, talaq of sunnah, talaq bid'ah. She asked him about it. He said, I don't know, but you can go and ask Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman, you know, the Imam of Al-Kufa at the time, Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman, the student of Ibrahim al-Nakhai. So he told her, go to that man, Hammad, ask him, and then inform me of the ruling, so I get to know the answer. So she went and she informed him. He said, that knowledge actually seems to be better than the knowledge that I'm studying. So he left argumentation, and then he went to Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman. He studied with him for 18 years. 18 years, until Imam Hammad passed away. And Abu Hanifa became the only scholar, main scholar in Al-Kufa. So he studied with Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman. Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman, he studied with Ibrahim al-Nakhai. With Ibrahim al-Nakhai. And all this fiqh of Al-Kufa is actually taken from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It's taken from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So that was the time when Abu Hanifa started to study the fiqh. But as we said, he was a very intelligent person, and he used that intelligence a lot. So he would get himself out of any difficult situation by means of his eloquence. So inshallah we might share something, we might, not necessarily, but inshallah we're going to keep our pattern, that this halaqah will be titled لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Indeed, in their stories, there are lessons for people of reflection, people of understanding. In the life of Abu Hanifa, there's so many lessons to learn. One of the main lessons that I really learned is his level of worship. Despite him being a knowledgeable person, busy with knowledge, but he would pray so much at night. He would pray so much at night. Excuse me. Second thing was using his intelligence for the sake of Allah. Using his intelligence. So, to the extent that he was known, or his school was known, not only his school, even his teachers, as Ahl al-Ra'i, Madrasatu Ahl al-Ra'i, the school of the people of mind, of thought. Because they used to use logic and understanding a lot. So they used to get into the text and understand exactly what the text is all about. Understand the wisdom behind it, and so on. And so on and so forth. So he used that a lot. And the debates of Abu Hanifa with atheists are famous, with Christians are famous, with different denominations and sects are very famous, very powerful. He would corner someone straight away. He knows how to, it's more like a boxing match. He knows how to corner that person and get them stuck. So that was Imam Abu Hanifa. So these are beautiful things that we can learn from such a great Imam. May Allah have mercy upon him. So we'll stop here inshallah. If you have any questions, first about Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Hanifa. If not, we'll take some more general questions. Okay, after I pray the 5 daily prayers, I spit into my hands, between brackets, dry spit, and recite the 3 quls and Ayatul Kursi. Is this authentic? As far as I know, there's nothing from the Prophet ﷺ after the salah to recite the 3 quls and blow into your hands or spit into your hands. But the Prophet ﷺ before sleep, he would recite the 3 quls and blow into his hands and wipe over his body. So that would be before sleep. But after the 5 daily prayers, I haven't seen any authentic hadith about this. Sorry. What does Islam say about organ and blood donations? That's an issue of debate among scholars. Big, huge debate among scholars. Organ donations, and that's based on, does your body belong to you or does it belong to Allah? Do you have the right to donate or not? So there's a huge debate among the scholars. Bismillah. I'm personally being very careful with this. I will take the cautious side with it. So for myself, I would not go into donating organs, but I cannot make a judgment about it. So in this you need to ask a scholar that you trust, what is their opinion, and take it. But if you're going to look into what the scholars say, you're going to find opinions on both sides. So don't think you will resolve the issue. You won't resolve the issue. Here, you look up to a scholar that very well versed and very well acquainted with what we're going through these days and about the matter you're asking. You ask their opinion because you trust their religion and their knowledge and their devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stick to their opinion and that's it. Because you are a muqallid and muttabi'. You are a muqallid and muttabi'. But for you to start saying, oh, I want to see what this scholar says, what this scholar says, you're going to find different opinions. You don't have the tools to distinguish which one is stronger. So you're going to just increase your state of confusion and will just get worse. So find out a scholar that you usually look up to and trust, a very well-known, versed scholar, very well established. You take their opinion or their advice and that's it. That's it. Don't throw it at another scholar and say, this scholar says this, what do you say? That's not good business to do. Another question here. What is the authenticity of making dhikr in congregation? Dhikr in congregation is usually reciting Quran and discussing the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. That's majalis al-dhikr. You find in the hadith, ما من قوم يجلسون فيذكرون الله عز وجل. These are majalis of dhikr, where the Quran is recited, where the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is recited. But it's not dhikr where people in congregation start saying Allah, Allah, Hayy, Hayy. This is not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes if it happens randomly, that people had a meeting or something, towards the end someone makes a dua, others say Ameen. If it happens randomly, it's not a regular practice, it's like a must, that should be okay. But if it becomes a must, like after every meeting, someone makes dua, all puts their hands up, and they say Ameen, and so if it becomes a must, that wasn't known from the Prophet ﷺ. If it happens randomly, then inshallah, fine. I'm going to come to you, just one second. There are booklets and people who say you recite certain verses a number of times or praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a certain number of times and they are cure from sickness and other problems. There are things from the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ like prescribed in the hadith, reciting Surah Al-Fatiha 7 times is a remedy. Like the companions who were visiting some place, and the leader of that tribe got bitten by a snake or a scorpion, and then one of the companions recited Surah Al-Fatiha 7 times on him. So that was the Prophet ﷺ approved of this. So that's fine. The Prophet ﷺ, there was certain adhkar. You say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, things like that. You say Subhanallah wa bihamdih every day in the morning 100 times. You say Subhanallah wa bihamdih 100 times every time. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulk wa lahul hamdu wa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Anything that's from the Prophet ﷺ that's prescribed in a certain amount of times, that's authentic, so that's you do it. But if people come up and they say, if you say Subhanallah 512 times, then basically you will receive $1,000 somehow, or you will be cured of this illness. If it's not from the Prophet ﷺ, don't do it. We don't know. These are matters of ghaib. So if there's a certain number, or certain prescription, or a dua for a specific state, a specific dua, then this has to come from the Quran or the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Apart from this, it shouldn't be the case. It should not be the case. But if you have you are in an illness and you have random dua, oh Allah, help me, oh Allah, give me shifa, just a random dua, that's fine. You can do this. But holding a specific dua in a specific manner, at specific time, specific number of times, this has to come from the Sunnah. If not, it's considered to be a bid'ah. Yes, Murad, what was your question? You changed your mind? Yes, that's in Qiyam al-Layl, yeah, by the way. So he recited Al-Baqarah, Nisa and Ali Imran, yes. That was the incident Abdullah ibn Mas'ud reported, yeah.
The second one is, back in the Sahaba's days, there was not, they didn't have shampoo, body wash shampoo.
They had something called Al-Ushnan. Al-Ushnan. Al-Ushnan is more like soap. It's more like soap. It's made from dust, from dirt, from a certain type of soil. So they would actually get some kind. I think it was more like what do you call that substance? Calcium carbonate, something like that. Carbonates. Some chemical material. Now it's the basic ingredient in any soap. What is it called? Sodium carbonate. Who knows? Who knows some chemistry? The basic ingredient in soap is some carbonates, sodium or calcium, sodium carbonate, I think. Sodium carbonates. Okay, so that was taken from certain type of sand. Okay, it's called among the Arabs al-ushnan. Al-ushnan. So they used to use it. Yes, they used to use it. Okay.
My question is, do the calamities which happen, are they always a result of the person's sins, or it might be...
Calamities that happen in someone's life are Allah's business. We can't peek into them. So there could be a punishment from Allah, there could be a test from Allah. Allah knows. But we cannot know for certain at all. And this is why we shouldn't get into that business. This happened, is it because of my sin, or is it because Allah wants to test me? You can't arrive at the answer. That's knowledge of the unseen. That's knowledge of the unseen. So we shouldn't get there. That's Allah's business. The more you try to know, the more confusion there will be, the more doubt you're going to have. And we are not supposed to look into this. Okay?
Yeah, I was just asking because there's different ayahs in Quran.
Yeah.
There's like one or two would say that it's because of what human beings hands have earned, and
Yeah.
others would say it's from shaitan.
Yes. Any hardship that reaches a human being, there must be, shaitan must have an element in it first. And number two, there must be a sin or shortcoming behind it. That's a must. But it could be a punishment, it could be a test. No one knows. So one thing, or like a calamity, could be all of those things. It could be from shaitan, it could be from sins, it could be a punishment, it could be a test. At the same time, as we said, that's Allah's business. So let Allah do His thing. All what we need to know is that once we go through a hardship, we should trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be patient and not do anything haram, and try our best, to get out of it. And make taslim to Allah. Basically hand our affairs over to Allah. That's all what we need to do. And that's all what we need to know. Is it a test? Is it a punishment? What's going to happen? What does Allah mean behind this? That's none of our business. And that's why Al-Hasan, I believe it was Al-Hasan bin Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, السعيد من انشغل بما أراد الله منه لا من انشغل بما أراد الله به. The one who will be happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who keeps himself busy with what Allah wants from him. What does Allah command you to do? Not what Allah wants to do with him. Okay? So don't worry, what's Allah doing to me? Or why is Allah dealing with me like, don't get into this business. But ask yourself all the time, what does Allah want from me? How should I behave in this state? And that's it. So that should be the focus. Otherwise it leads to confusion. Why prayer is important? Islam 101. It's a simple question, but it's a profound question. Prayer is important because it's the pillar of Islam, and because it's a very profound act of worship. It engages your heart, your body, your mind, your senses and everything. And it's the main connection between you and Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُ أَعْمَالِكُمْ الصَّلَاةِ. The best of all of your actions is salah. The best of all of your actions is salah. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, الصَّلَاةُ خَيْرُ مَوْضُوعٍ. Salah is the best subject. Is the best thing you can think about or talk about or discuss. Salah is the prayer. So salah, why is it important? Because salah is strongly connected to your faith and tawheed. And this is why the Muslim scholars have debated throughout the ages, someone who doesn't observe the prayer, is he a Muslim or kafir? That's how important it is. That's how important it is. Salah is a time for you to escape, a time for you to connect to Allah and revive your heart. It's not merely a physical exercise. So I hope this answers the question in very brief terms. Questions?
I heard from someone recently that Imam Abu Hanifa, he will not take hadith from people who are involved in the fitna. Is this correct?
Yes, Abu Hanifa was, as I said, he was very stringent as to where he takes a hadith from and which hadith he takes. So people who got involved in a fitna or a bid'ah, he'll be very careful to take from them. Because at his time, lying against the Prophet ﷺ was at its peak. So he was very careful. He would be very vigilant while accepting a hadith. Yes, he would scrutinize it. And sometimes he would even not accept a hadith just to be on the safe side. That's it. So the hadith might be authentic, but for him, he needs to be just cautious, very cautious. Yeah. So that was his approach. Yes. Brother, you had a question?
How do we attain the title of Abu Hanifa when his name is Imam?
That's a very good question. Abu Hanifa. Hanifa in the Arabic language of the people of Iraq, Hanifa is the ink bottle, the bottle of the ink, that container that has the ink. The Arabs in Iraq called it Hanifa. So Abu Hanifa, the father of the ink bottle. That's what it means. Because Abu Hanifa was a very studious person. And he would always keep writing and teaching and studying. So because of that, like the Arabs, if someone had something excessively, they would call him Abu that thing. Like Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, he had a cat. Abu Huraira had the cat in his pocket, by the way. That's something most people don't know. They say Abu Huraira had a few cats. Yes, but Abu Huraira had a cat that he would put in his pocket. Small kitten. He would put it in his pocket and keep it with him and feed it. So this is why the Arabs, they called him Abu Huraira. The Prophet ﷺ called him Ya Aba Hir, father of the kitten. Right? Aba Hir. For example, you have Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was one of the people who were sieged by the Muslims in Al-Ta'if. He was actually one of the slaves in Al-Ta'if. And when the Muslims set a siege around Al-Ta'if against Hawazin and Thaqif, the Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who gets out of there, leaves the city of Al-Ta'if, then he is free to go. Especially if they want to become a Muslim, they're free to go. So this man, he was, as a slave, he actually managed to escape out of Ta'if and become a Muslim. But he came out of Ta'if and he went to an area called Bakra. So when people found him in Bakra, they called him Abu Bakra. That's it, Abu Bakra. So that's until today, that's very common among the Arabs. So anyone who has something that stands out for him or is unique about him, they would call him Abu this. You have a tie, Abu tie. Khalas. Shoes, Abu big shoes. Khalas, straight away, that's it. Someone had a big nose, they'd call him Abu big nose. Straight away. That's how the Arabs used to do things. So anything you had special, they would call you Abu this, and that's it. Yes. So Abu Hanifa, because he was excessively all the time holding the ink container or bottle, and it's called in the language of the people of Iraq, Hanifa. So they called him Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, yes.
Two questions, yes. First about Abu Hanifa, it was not what I read or some talks are there, that was his daughter's thing.
When I researched, I haven't found that. I haven't found that, yes. The only explanation I found was actually that he used to hold this and it was called Hanifa, yeah.
And the second is regarding to that, the organ donor. I understand what you said. There are people who just go to the bank, like a blood bank, or donate their skin tissues.
Oh, by the way, what I talked, that's a very good thing you brought this up. When I talked about organs, I talked about organs, not blood, okay? Blood, it's almost a consensus today that you can actually, yes, donate blood. But I'm talking about organ donation. Okay, yes.
So in case of organ donation, yes, there are banks for taking the skin tissues and all. And the second part is that you sign it after my death, take my eyes and this and that. I understand that part is not there. But what if a person, a brother of yours, is sick at that level where they need, let's say, a kidney transplant?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to help them? You're not giving to the bank.
I understand. I understand this is a very critical thing, that when one, like someone who's very close to you, very dear to you, a family member, and they have kidney failure, for example, so they need a kidney, or it's a very critical state of someone, they need some kind of organ donation. How should that be? As I said, that's why some of the scholars actually considered that it's saving a life of a human being. It's saving the life of a human being. So that's why some of the scholars actually say it's okay. But still some other scholars say, at the end of the day, that's not your body and you don't have the right to cut out something out of it. And basically the logic to respond to a similar case, what if there's someone who's in need of this? They would say, life and death is in the hands of Allah, and it's written. So people for thousands of years have been dying of kidney failure. And because there was no medication, there was no medicine, there wasn't kidney transplant at the time, people who had kidney failure, basically that meant the end of their life. That's it. So, and people lived with that. So it said the fact that there is scientific improvements now, medical improvements, that actually give hope to people with kidney transplant, that doesn't change the original grounding of our ruling, which is basically your body is not yours, so you're not allowed to give it. So, as I say, you'll find scholars here and scholars there, and there's a big, huge debate. So I, for myself, I take a middle stance. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have the knowledge to be able to really even side to one of them. I don't. Yeah. Barakallahu feek. Questions? Yeah.
What is your opinion about Allah's justice? Would it be
Allah is just. That's my opinion about Allah's justice.
for this world or hereafter?
Allah is just all the time. Allah is just all the time. Now there's an issue with this question. Justice, is it only for the hereafter, or is it even for this time? Now, there is a level of justice in this world. There is a level of justice in this world. Meaning, when you do something, as they say, what goes around comes around. So there's a tacit level of justice. But the justice that takes place in this world, is it the ultimate justice? No. But that doesn't mean Allah is unjust. Because Allah designed this universe to be a test. And part of the test is people would wrong, some people would wrong others. Some people would oppress others. So if there would be justice all the time, there would be no oppression. So Allah allows injustice to take place because He gave humans choice and He wants to see how they behave. But ultimately, all matters will return to Him and they will be settled completely. So all disputes, all injustice will be settled and resolved completely. So there will be absolute justice towards the end of time. Does that answer your question?
So, towards the end of time, but not in this world.
And no, that kind of division is problematic because time is for you and for me. For Allah, there's no past and present. Okay, so we're talking about our perception. Yeah. Things have a different reality. When we take them out of the timeline, they're different. But we are bound by time, so we're speaking with our terms. We can't force our own boundaries on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That doesn't work. Okay. Yes. Salam to Allah.
You mentioned that Abu Hanifa traditionally has background from Afghanistan. Did he also write Farsi, and do you have some of his work?
I haven't seen anything that he wrote in Farsi. I don't know about this. I haven't seen.
The second question I had, you mentioned that, at that time obviously Iraq was majority non-Muslim, because it took a while for it to become Muslim.
At the time of Abu Hanifa? No, at the time of Abu Hanifa was all Muslim.
The whole Iraq.
The whole Iraq. And the whole, what you know today is Iran. And even Afghanistan.
Like it was conquered as a, but I'm talking about the population, the majority of the
The majority of them became Muslim.
Okay. But you also mentioned that there's a lot of examples of Imam Abu Hanifa's talk with the non-Muslims.
Yes.
The atheists, etc.
Yeah.
Could you provide some sources where we can read that, or maybe inshallah maybe we can share some stories next time we go into that, because we live also in a society with a lot of.
Yes, yes. I personally, there's an issue that a lot of people ask me what book to read. By the way, I'm not acquainted with the literature in English. A lot of the books that you have are actually translations. So I personally really don't read in English. So what I read usually is in Arabic. So in Arabic, the main source for me would be Siyar A'lam al-Nubala by Dhahabi. That's the main biography source. And for me, I go back to some of the books of the Hanafis that actually talk about Imam Abu Hanifa. So what you heard today was a collection from probably more than 15 sources. It's hard really to find, like even in Arabic I've been looking to find, there are some biographies, complete biographies of Abu Hanifa, but I personally couldn't find them. I couldn't land my hands on them yet. Yeah. So sorry, in English, I don't really know much. I don't know much. But I'm sure there must be something written about Abu Hanifa. It must be something.
I'm interested specifically
The debates. The debates. He had profound debates with them. Yes, he had profound debates. And maybe something good about Abu Hanifa is to take the principles of his debates and then apply them to today's context. That would be more powerful than the content itself. Yeah.
You said the Imam he refused to take the position as a judge
Yeah.
from Khalifa.
Yeah.
And so first the question is, when can you refuse a position like that? What if you in the best position to be the leader, for example, amongst your people?
That's a very good question. When does a scholar or a person accept an offer to a position like this, or when do they refuse it? That depends on so many factors. The nature of that leader, the nature of the government, the nature of the people, the whole political context, social context. The person himself. If you know it will be fitna for you, you shouldn't. Some people are strong enough in terms of they are very assertive, they are very organized, and they know they are people of action. So if they know that they can benefit people there, they should actually do it. Like the student of Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, his name Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, because he took that position. He accepted that offer later on. His teacher refused, he accepted it and he took it. And he became known as Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, the judge. Imam al-Shawkani, for example, he took that position of judge. He took it, but he spent most of his time in knowledge. Then, towards the end of his life, he took the position of judge. Today you have, for example, Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen was offered al-Qada. He refused it. He didn't see it was fit for him. It would be a fitna for him. Whereas you have people also like in Saudi, Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh. He was a very strong, actually, scholar at a young age. In his 30s, a very strong scholar, was a very promising scholar. He was offered the ministry of Awqaf. He saw some benefit there, he took it. Other people refused it. He took it. Until now, he's been holding it for about 25 years, within a short interval, but he's been holding it for about 25 years. And he's been doing well in it. So it depends. It depends on so many factors. If basically the ultimate answer would be, if it's good for you and for the people, then do it. If you see it's going to affect you negatively and you won't bring about much benefit, then you shouldn't. Yeah. So.
Sheikh, what's your opinion about following like a specific school of thought? Because from what I've read in Sheikh Albani's book, they all said if you find a hadith that goes against.
Okay, following a madhab, this is going to take a lengthy answer, so we will deal with it some other time, inshallah. Inshallah.
I also wanted to ask, you know the hadith where it says that you are not supposed to stay up all night in prayer or fast every single day.
All nights, yes.
So maybe Abu Hanifa didn't know about it or didn't
Not necessarily, but there's something we need to know about some of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. In usul al-fiqh, not everything the Prophet ﷺ says don't do becomes haram. In a sense, النهي للتحريم أم للكراهة. That's a big issue in usul al-fiqh. So a lot of the things the Prophet ﷺ said don't do, you will find, like the Prophet ﷺ prohibited he said don't recite the Quran in less than 3. Why would Uthman ibn Affan recite it in one night? Why? So a lot of the nahi, which is don't do, in the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, the scholars have classified them as makruh, as makruh, and some of them have classified them as, this is as irshad. This is a guidance from the Prophet ﷺ, it's a preference. It's a preference, don't do this, it's better not to do it. Imam al-Shafi'i would recite the Quran in such a short time as well. Didn't he know about the hadith? He knew about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Where do the scholars take this? They take it from some actions from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تشبهوا وتركم بمغربكم. Do not resemble witr to maghrib. In the sense, don't pray 2 rak'ah, then tashahhud, then stand for the third. But the Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith, he prayed witr like this. Does that mean contradiction? No, that shows that the Prophet ﷺ mainly do not pray witr as you pray maghrib, but if it happens every now and then, that's fine. That's what the scholars say. So taking one hadith and then saying, oh that's it, no. There's always a context for how the hadith is implemented. So the scholars say, those scholars who recite the Quran in less than 3 days, those who pray all night. There's a lot of imams who used to pray. Imam Ibn Battah al-Akbari, for example, he was in Iraq as well, one of the main imams of As-Sunnah. He was a very stringent follower of As-Sunnah. He never slept at night. Never slept, he would pray all night. So what about these scholars? They have what we call ta'wil. They have ta'wil. They see that the hadith is basically, for the general people, it's not going to be good for them. But for them, they see a goodness in them. They say, I might be one of the exceptions. Because the Prophet ﷺ gives general guidance. The Prophet ﷺ gives general guidance. Just like with Abu Bakr, when the Prophet ﷺ said about the izar going below the ankle, he said, Ya Rasulullah, inna izari yastarkhi, like my lower garment, it goes down, it gets loose, and it goes down. The Prophet ﷺ says, Innaka lasta mimman, you are the exception. You don't make it out of arrogance and kibr. So the Prophet ﷺ gave him that exception. So the scholars, when they look at these, they take rulings, principles from these issues. So there are exceptions to the general rulings. Who knows this? The scholars. The scholars. Okay, so that would be the answer to this. So whether Abu Hanifa, he came across this hadith or not, but at least he was working according to some principles. Yeah.
If a believer sets up on a path of intending to do a good action, and then after self-review realizes that that has been corrupted by, say, the swash of the shaitan, and should they try to cease that action or still continue and try to purify it?
Okay, if someone is doing something good and due to waswas,
Like they're that they had good intention,
Yeah.
but then it was like kind of corrupted.
Yeah.
So now their intention is not as pure.
What do you mean by intention is corrupted? Now it gets corrupted.
Say example, they did it. Originally they want to do it for fi sabilillah, and then afterwards it became like for other reasons. The word opposite to that.
Okay. The scholars say if you start an action like Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali said in Jami' Ulum al-Hikam, when he explains the first hadith, he says if you start an action with a good intention and it gets corrupted down the line, then you correct it, then the action should be okay, inshallah. So you should fight against that kind of waswas from shaitan, regardless of what it is. Take one more question if there is, and then we'll close. It's been taking long. Let me give the brother there, because, yeah.
What's the ruling on drop
It's good you changed your. I'm glad you did that. Okay.
shipping? What's the ruling on drop shipping?
On?
Drop shipping.
What's that?
Drop shipping is when you a seller makes partners up with a wholesaler and sells sells an item from the wholesaler straight to his customer. Right?
Okay.
They don't have the item. So
Yeah.
they just part-
Yeah, I mean, this needs a lot of, first of all, the very process needs some explanation because it's done in variant ways, like Amazon, right? So it's done in variant ways. And today, this is an issue of debate among scholars, but most of the scholars today, they're leaning towards making it permissible. And the reason is that the very basic concepts of trade have changed. Because in the past, for you to own something, to own something, you needed to possess it. It needed to be in your own stores. It needed to be there. But today, even the very basic concepts of trade, that if I have a deal with you, without you sending, the goods that I'm selling, without you sending them to me, but you straight away post them to the customer, but there's a tacit agreement that I'm responsible for them and they belong to me. So the scholars said, now what ownership means is actually changing these days because of online business. It's online. So a lot of the scholars today, they say that's okay. But still some of them are actually saying, no, there's a lot of problems with this.
Because in this case, you actually made a deal with the wholesaler, so it's kind of as if you have the items. It's not like you're just like saying, I'll sell you something that you actually don't have.
That's why, as I said, the majority of the scholars say it's basically like a proper sale. It's, yeah.
They actually don't charge you until they ship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a big, there's a lot of details that go into this. And what I understood from a lot of questions and explanations is that if you are not in the business, it's really hard for you to understand the intricacies of it. There's a lot of small, ins and outs there. So, yeah. Yeah, but the scholars who've studied this, the majority today of them, they say it's okay. It's okay, there's no issues with it, inshallah. طيب جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم وإياكم.